Sorry about that. We are back online, I take it? Okay, so we will go to disposition of delegate and public hearing business. Trochu Housing Corporation, 9.1. Discussion?
Okay, for fear of repeating myself, but I'm going to anyway. I think that we've asked numerous questions of both Trochu Housing Corporation, the town of Trochu, and of course, Mr. Smalden in the process of what we're doing. I think we have a fairly good understanding of the impact of their request to have us guarantee $20 million borrowing on their part, so we'd act as a guarantor. My preference would have been that that number be a lot smaller, but that's, we asked them to ask specifically what it is that they wanted, and they have. So I guess I would like to see us as council support the town of Trochu in this initiative to access the ASLL grant and obtain the $19 million. I would like to see us do it with a number of conditions attached to our participation, not the least of which would be that we do some public consultation through a borrowing bylaw ourselves, that the town of Trochu has public buy-in by their ratepayers via their engagement process, that the funding that we provide be conditional on them actually receiving the ASLI grant of $19 million, that we potentially provide a condition that says we want to see 90% of life lease pre-sale, and that we give them not a floating timeline, but a specific hard timeline of 5 years from the date of our approval of the potential to do this. So in my mind, the grant funding has to be there. The pre-sale of the life leases have to be there. There has to be the public engagement and buy-in by the taxpayers of the town of Trochu. We provide them with a very specific and hard timeline, and the requirement of all the necessary legislative components that are required to do this kind of project are in place. That's kind of my opening position on this. I really feel that the town of Trochu has the potential to go ahead on a project like this, and I know there's some risk for Kneehill County, and I believe that Kneehill County, it's our obligation to protect ourselves as much as we can from this risk, but there's no such thing as no risk. At some point in time, everything we do in life carries risk. So I would really like to see us go forward and develop the conditions that we feel are appropriate and that provide us with as much protection as we can to our ratepayers and to our municipality, but to go in and support Trochu, town of Trochu, Trochu Housing Corporation, to allow them to move forward in applying for the grant funding and potentially going forward with the project that they are proposing.
Thank you, Councillor King. Is there any discussion? Yes, Councillor Christie.
My feeling is much the same as Ken's. I believe that this has both a positive impact on employment, and I believe that a lot, I don't know the percentage of urban or rural residents that would end up in this facility. I know that it seems to be the model the province is looking at to construct seniors care provincially. I don't want to leave $19 million on the table that we said no to. I believe that the security for their operating loan and their business structure that is there is a template that's been used and been successfully used. So I believe for our community, it has a win-win on both sides. So I think it's something that we have the ability to support. I certainly agree with Ken where it needs very, not stringent conditions, but conditions that we can live with on security on long term. I'm not maybe as concerned if it's not going to go without the $19 million grant. So there's little or no risk in my mind because you have a $19 million facility that has some debt carrying capacity by itself once it gets operational. And that seems to be what the province is building on. That's my view.
Thanks, Wade. Anyone else want to weigh in? Deputy Reed, Councillor Keever?
If we have a list of conditions, is that not asking for a deferral? Like, when you make these conditions, then you get it. Is that not a deferral?
Councillor King?
I guess my response to that would be is the conditions that I believe that we need to place on our agreement to providing the security that they're asking for are protection for Kneehill County. And it then becomes the onus then drops onto the town of Trochu and the Trochu Housing Corporation to meet those conditions. If they do not meet those conditions, they do not get the security guarantee. It's no different than us going to borrow money from somebody for some project. If they specify there's certain conditions on which that money is available to us, it's incumbent on us to meet the conditions. I would rather tell them that here's what we are willing to do based on these following parameters being met than to out and out say no. So we're not saying an absolute yes, we're saying yes, but. And the buts are, you get the grant, you do the pre-sales, you get the support of your ratepayers, you realize that you have not this floating timeline, but it's a specific timeline, and you have to stay within those things. So it's not a deferral, it's a, yes, we will support you. No, it's not a stall. It's a, yes, we will support you, but you have to meet these conditions. We have to protect our ratepayers. We have to protect Kneehill County, and the way we do that is we build the conditions that we can comfortably, or maybe with some reluctance, go ahead and provide them with a basis to at least let them pitch this to the provincial government.
Deputy Reeve McGee?
I really appreciate the points you've made, Ken, and they do make me feel better as I contemplated. I was very open and earlier in our conversations, and I think I need to air it for all people to hear. I had a few principles that are really concerning me. One, there are residents who are really appreciative that we never considered debt in the past. Would like to see that continue. So that's a principle that we're looking at people outside of this dynamic. We not understand why we would take it. So that weighs on me. It weighs on me that we are part of the Kneehill Housing Corporation and where the overlaps lie, and also through that, my sitting on that committee, I have a lot of doubts about the actual need in this area, especially now that the province has granted Drumheller a grant for building services there. When I speak for my division, I believe this will have zero impact on my division as far as service to them. But as a county as whole, I'd like to be a friendly partner and to support positive things that happen. And I think some of those restrictions are making me feel a bit better about that. And I also think with you saying that we need to have a public meeting, both as a town of Trochu, taking that on, as well as us as a county, helps alleviate some of my questions about is this viable enough for people to get behind, and is this where we want to put that loan risk, the risk of lending money, because I think getting along with the people who want to have this happen, that's an easy yes. For me, all the other consequences of that is weighing very, very heavy on me, and I'm feeling I need a fair bit more information in regards of why we would put it in this and not something else that brings more economic growth to us faster. And but I think a public meeting would give that conversation time to grow in both places, and it probably address that question quite well. So I would find that a content point to be put in. Just so you know, though, I have some real huge concerns about us doing it.
Councillor King.
I would just respond to that, and I'd love to have lots more time as well. Be wonderful to be able to put this in a plebiscite and ask the voters in Kneehill County if they were willing to support this in that way. So we don't have that kind of time. Town of Trochu seems to feel, and according to what Sam said this morning, that the timeline is short as far as this go-round for ASLI grant. So if we're going to do a borrowing bylaw, there has to be that public component involved with that borrowing bylaw. Am I not correct? So that gives opportunity for our ratepayers to weigh in. So if we advertise that we're going to do this and say we're going to create this borrowing bylaw, and we get inundated with people who say, no way, then one of our conditions is that this borrowing bylaw that we're going to go forward has to make it through our public process as well. I'd love way more time. We don't have it. That's the reality. I'd love to take this to an election and say, let's put a plebiscite to say, will we want to do this? And let our individual voters make that decision. We don't have that time. So the result of that is it's our obligation around this table to make that decision. And so we just need to do that in the best way we can and in a way that provides the maximum amount of protection to our ratepayers and to this municipality while we're partnering with our neighbor.
Deputy Reid McGee.
Just to paraphrase you, we have confidence in the tools that are available for procedure to come out with the right ending to this story, is what you're saying. And I really appreciate, because I wasn't totally comprehending that being the truth until we've had this conversation. So thank you.
I guess I'll have a few comments here, and I certainly see your side. Well, it's not your side. I see I see the arguments. Well, okay, they're not arguments either. I see the points. But we have a lot of unknowns at the present time. The effects of COVID-19 give me a lot of angst. We've seen what COVID-19 does to our seniors population throughout Canada, maybe not so much within the county, but what it's done to provincial and federal. And I can see regulatory changes coming forward, because from what I see, no one is happy with how seniors facilities are currently being run. I believe there will be some regulatory changes coming, whether those are provincially mandated, whether those are federally mandated, doesn't really matter. But we've also seen how mandates from the province and the feds are left up to the residents of the municipality to deal with. For whatever reason, the funding does not flow with the regulatory changes that they propose and that they enforce. I know we have a number, and that number of seniors will be growing over the years. Unfortunately, some of the seniors may not see that coming, and that's just the way life goes. I don't see private industry rushing in to help, because I don't see private industry, they do it on a profit basis. And there doesn't seem to be, and I'm not saying that it should be a profit. It should be on a compassionate, it should be on a need basis. But again, I have angst over what's coming. I know that COVID-19 will disappear, but that being said, I know I will disappear. And I just find that there's more risk here than I think I would be willing to place upon the residents of Kneehill County. That being said, I am open to change my mind. But if we have to make a decision, and we have to make it now, for me, it's unfortunate the circumstances that we're in at the present time. And it's just unfortunate is how I feel about this whole thing. And if it was a year ago, 2 years ago, I think I'd be completely different opinion to this. But I can't see into the future, but I can see what's happening right now, and it's not looking like I could support. Councillor Penner, do you have anything to share with us? Sorry if I'm putting you on the spot.
Like you said, Jerry. No problem. If they'd come, if an organization had come to us a couple of years ago, absolutely. Just with the state of the economy, whether provincially and federally right now, it's tough. But saying that, I'd like to work with our neighbors in some way. And if we are very specific with some stipulations that have to be met, and they prove to us that they have got the grant, then I feel more comfortable. But I mean, if they don't get the ASL grant, it's not going ahead. I believe I heard at one of their presentations. But yeah, just like I said, it was a couple of years ago, a whole different picture. But with a lot of my ratepayers in my division, they will go to Drum, and Drum has been approved for a level 4. So yep, I'm waving back and forward right now here.
Deputy Reeve McGee?
I just also have to weigh in that as the representative, one of the representatives to the Kneehill Housing, I'm really struggling because I feel that this is in conflict with them as well. And so I just think that needs to be said and acknowledged. I'm not saying that that should actually deter us necessarily, but I think we need to be very cognizant of the possible overlaps here that that exist. And I do think there's a bit of history there where they've been approached, but I don't know. I think if Kneehill Housing wasn't meeting the need appropriately, how have the municipalities addressed that in the past that made Trochu get to this point? That would be interesting information, but I agree. Let's get along the best we can with those tight stipulations, and yeah, I'm feeling very much in conflict to my role there at Kneehill Housing, though. I think it's big conflict.
Councillor King?
Just to address a couple of the concerns that I heard raised, and these aren't necessarily complete or total answers, but if I had a parent in care and I had to choose between Red Deer or Three Hills at this point in time, in my mind, there'd be no question. The level of care might not be the same in the facilities, but the protection for our seniors in our more rural seniors housing has been, I think, better, safer places for them to be. So I'm very appreciative of the facilities that we have in Kneehill County and of the job that they're doing to protect our seniors in this COVID pandemic. So I think we have to give a shout out to Kneehill Housing and the other senior residences that are in Kneehill County, in the municipalities that are part of our neighborhood, who are looking after our seniors and are doing one heck of a good job. So that's my acknowledgement that I think senior care that's happening within Kneehill County is very good, even though the state of some of those facilities aren't that good. However, that said, if Kneehill Housing was to look at this particular project, it would definitely be a cost to all of the municipalities, not just Trochu, because it would be a requisition that would show up on our books. And there would be an increased cost to every one of our taxpayers if this was to go forward under the Kneehill Housing umbrella. So one of the things I'm very thankful for is this is not Kneehill Housing, this is Trochu Housing Corporation outside of that requisition ability, and therefore is not going to impact our bottom line year in and year out. So we have the long-term risk, yes, but we don't have the constant risk that has been faced by other municipalities when these kind of developments have taken place. So to me, that's also an advantage. As far as hard times and economic times, we don't know if it's going to get better or it's going to get worse. I mean, who can predict that? We can't predict what the weather's going to be tomorrow with any level of reliability. So we can't predict economic times, nor can we predict legislative requirements for these type of facilities. But we do know that those legislative requirements and the impact of the economics is going to impact every single one of these facilities. We have heard Trochu Housing Corporation, we've heard Sam Smalden say, new facilities tend to have a greater uptake by people desiring to live there because of the better facility, the more amenities, blah, 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 blah. They come with some costs, but that seems to be where people want to go. So we can argue the business case, we can argue a lot of things. The economics, none of us know. Not even for ourselves going forward as a county in terms of what impacts are going to be there. And so, yeah, I acknowledge there is a risk for us to provide what they're asking for. And it's not in any way, shape, or form a small risk, but I think it's a manageable risk in my mind. Now, that's my opinion of what we're talking about here. So just in response to what kind of care can we get in rural, I think it's absolutely stellar. Are the facilities all up to snuff? Not necessarily, but they are doing, I think, a superb job with limitations. This doesn't come with a requisition. Thank goodness it doesn't come with a requisition. And economy, who knows where we're going to end up.
Councillor Christie?
I guess my comment and my feeling of where I live is the economy is stronger in rural Alberta in the area that we're talking about than I'm going to say 90% of Alberta, especially when you look at the position that this county's in versus other counties in the province. I go back to where if we're growing, we're going to excel. If we don't grow, we're going to die. I believe this is a facility that will grow. I think the facility, or I'm thinking in my mind, I know of two couples east of the river that would go to Trochu, not Drumheller. But the facilities are there. To match the new regulations that are coming, the first thing that this has over St. Mary's is individual washrooms for patients. That's a huge importance to me. And the service that we need from level 1 to level 4 isn't matched in very many places. And I believe that's where the province is using this template to build new facilities. And we're long past due when you look at St. Mary's.
Through
Yes, go
Through
ahead,
Jerry,
Councillor
through the
Penner.
and I hear you, Wade, there, like St. Mary's, for sure, it's its time is up and we need to move forward. And I do love this model. You know, you go in one end, and as your health deteriorates, you go in one end healthy, I should say, and as your health deteriorates, they move you to another building, and in sense, you don't leave the location. More and more that is happening. We've had neighbors and who have had to move, of course, to this Red Deer and that to be in one of these facilities. So, you know, it is positive that somebody's put the initiative forward to try and get one closer to home. So I praise them for what they have put forward here.
Councillor Kiever?
I know time is of, you know, I mean, we've used a lot of time on this article. But maybe we'd have better luck convincing Trochu to throw in with us on a building that's really drastically reduced in price for sale, that's fairly new. And we just go with their idea, you know, I mean, of what they need, but it's just not in Trochu.
You going to have a comment?
I think that's a great idea, but I,
Pushing.
it's okay. I think that was a great idea. It took me a few minutes to collect my thoughts, sorry. I thought I had something to say, and then I didn't know how to say it, so here I am now. But we have to make decisions based on what we have as facts today right here, and I think that's a lovely idea, but I think it's too late to ask that question.
So here we sit. What are we doing? What are we gonna do? What is council's thoughts, wishes?
Well, I guess I would have a question, and I would put this probably to our administration at this point in time. You've heard our conversation. You understand, I hope you understand some of the parameters, the conditions that we're interested in seeing. If council was to make this decision to go ahead with a fair amount of stringent conditions, does our administration feel they have enough information at this point in time to be able to come back to council with a request that would allow us to approve with the suitable conditions and guarantees in place?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think administration, we do. There are a number of questions within those conditions that would need to be answered in terms of what our involvement in the facility would be, what securities would be put up. You know, would we be a secured creditor? Would we not? I don't know. I would have to look in to see if that's even possible for us to become. But there are a bunch of questions like that that we would have to give some thought to. Overall, do we have an understanding as to, you know, to be able to put that list of proposed conditions together? I think we do. You know, we wouldn't have that wouldn't come today, but we would be able to put that together as suggestions for council to minimize the county's risk to the extent that we can. Administratively, I know the lens we're looking at it through, just in terms of the economic or the dollars. You know, we tend to side on being more risk adverse. So, you know, our view on this is it's not necessarily something we would recommend, but we do understand the points that on each side of the debate that council has made. And again, it is a question of, you know, there are different philosophies or different lenses through which to view this. Just the economic one, we would, you know, administratively, we'd like to keep that financial freedom available to the county and not lock it into a project at this, but that's only one lens. And as you guys have had in your discussion, there's definitely other viewpoints out there. So but going back to the original question of, would we be able to put a list of conditions together? I believe that we would.
So if we were to make a motion that would request that administration do that, in what format would you like to see that? I know that the motion that's in the letter from the town of Trochu, we would be amending the request that they have our motion state to reflect more the conditions and parameters under which we were providing that funding. So I guess is what you're looking for at this point in time, a confirmation that, yes, we want to go ahead and, but only with an appropriately phrased and stated decision and motion?
Coming out of this, there should be direction to administration one way or the other. So there should be a formal motion that comes out. I would recommend that that direction be for administration to develop a list of conditions around this, because what we come back with some of you as members of council may look at that list of conditions and say, based on these conditions, I'm not willing to support this, or based on these conditions, I am willing to support this. The conditions might make or break some of those votes. So I think I would not go the direction of outright approval or support, but rather that direction to have administration develop a list of proposed conditions that could be placed on county support of the Trochu Housing Corporation request.
Through the Reeve one more time, I guess. And would you be able to bring that back to the next council meeting? Do you think that would be sufficient time to develop those and bring it back? I know that town of Trochu has some desire for us to make a decision on their behalf, so I'm just wondering in terms of the amount of timeline that you see administration needing to do that.
I can, if council gives me a moment, I can confer with some staff, because we need to develop the conditions, which I think we have the capacity to do relatively quickly. It's looking at figuring out what all we would need to do. There are elements of any borrowing bylaw that, we know they're just listed in the MGA. The process for that, though, in terms of making sure that that's advertised and what else would entail in that, I know we wouldn't have to prepare that bylaw, but looking at those processes, like I said, I can confer with my colleagues and answer that question shortly.
Deputy Reeve McGee?
Could I suggest and even make a motion that we take a 5-minute break? No, different motion. First, I'd like to make a motion that we will extend past 4:30 to finish this topic. And then I will make a second motion to have a 5-minute break.
Okay, we will deal with the motion to extend past our 4:30 deadline. This has to be unanimous consent. All those in favor? Councillor Hugo, are you with us at all? Okay, well, from what I can see, there was 6 of us, and it was unanimous that we extend past the 4:30 timeline, and you're requesting for a recess. So we will take a recess. Thank you.
We did?
Okay, I haven't brought the meeting back to order, I just wanted to
Okay.
give you the opportunity to do one way or the other. Okay, I will bring the meeting back to order. Mr. Hogan, you had a question posed to you?
Yes. So we, given some thought about this over the recess, we can have an item back for the next meeting. It may not be the full list of conditions, because there may be some council debate on some of the principles that you want to incorporate. So as an example, do you want one member, which has been the offer in the past, on the board? Do you want more than that? Do you want, is that for the term of the loan? There's different strategies around how the county would go about doing this if we did. And so we can bring back a general template of conditions. We can bring back what the framework would look like, as well as look into some timelines. So for example, if the county did need to issue a borrowing bylaw, then there's a process that we have to go through for that. And that's not a 1 or 2 week process. Like a borrowing bylaw is more than that. So, we can come back with a framework about what this looks like. We won't come back with something that, in time for the next meeting, we won't have something in front of you that you could necessarily put a stamp on and say, yep, this is the deal, right? But if a framework and what some of the things might look like, we can have that back to you on we can have something back to you.
Councillor King?
Yeah, through the Reeve. I guess I appreciate that, and thank you. My desire is that we would get to the point where we can either issue a qualified, or not qualified, a yes that has condition, a conditional yes, or a definite no, so that at least the town of Trochu and Trochu Housing Corporation has some concept of whether Kneehill County Council is even contemplating a positive response to this. So either we're going to get there with a conditional yes, or we're going to get there with an unqualified no. And that way, it either allows Trochu Housing Corporation and the town of Trochu to move forward in the process, or they know that there is no room to move forward. I think the details, the devil's always in the details, and those take time. But at least we need to get to a point where we can either say, yep, conditional yes, or absolute no.
Deputy Reeve McGee?
I agree 100%. Thought I should let you know, since it feels like, you might not think I agree with you very often.
I appreciate the indulgence of council and the willingness to engage in this conversation. And I think in fairness to our neighbor, we need to give him an answer of some sort and take him off the hook, sort of thing, so they know where we are. And so that's why I'm pushing for us to get to that point, and that's why I'm asking the things I'm asking. So thank you for your patience and your indulgence.
Are you putting a timeline on the conditional yes?
I'm putting a timeline in terms of what administration is saying, that they would be able to come back to us at the next meeting to give us some information that would allow us to make either a conditional yes or an absolute no. And then the details of that conditional yes would be partly fleshed out for our next meeting, but would probably need some massaging and some additional legwork to get them all in place. And so at least we'll have enough information from administration side to say, these are the legislative potential requirements, or these are the things that might have to happen in order for us to do this. And if all of these things were to take place and the conditions that we have laid out for the yes were met by the town of Trochu, then we can at least move forward. So basically the timeline that I'm thinking that we're looking at having to make that decision would probably be the next council meeting. And then all that massaging and detail work that would need to take place to put all the paperwork in place might take slightly longer than that. But at least at that point in time, we'd be able to say to Trochu, yes, no. Yes, with a lot of qualifications and a lot of conditions applied, or no. And I think in fairness to them, we have to do that.
So with all these qualifications that we're looking for, is that not delaying it?
It is delaying the decision till our next council meeting, and it will delay sort of the final documents that might have to be in place for us to agree with the town of Trochu to go ahead. But it's not a deferral of a decision. It's not deferring the decision and saying, well, we won't decide today, but we don't know when we're going to come back to it. This way, at least we have a hard timeline in which we have to address this, which is next council meeting. And I guess that's where I'm going with it, is I'm trying to keep us from, yes, we are deferring it from today, Councillor Kiever, I agree. But we're not deferring it indefinitely. And so I'm looking to the experts in our administration to help us as council to understand what conditions we might want to put on a yes.
That's what I was just gonna ask Mr. Hogan. How would that motion read?
I think that the motion would be that the council direct administration to prepare a proposed list of conditions and frameworks and framework regarding support of the Trochu Housing Corporation project.
Councillor King?
Mr. Reeve, I'd be prepared to make that motion, what he said.
Okay, I do not see that on our screen. Because you told me I can't push any buttons over here, that's why we can't see it. Is that the way you would like that motion to read, Councillor King?
Yeah, that will, I mean, that'll suffice for the direction we need as administration. It's just a matter of if you want to add any nuances or anything to it. So move that council direct administration to prepare a framework of processing conditions related to possible support.
If I was going to make any change, the only change I would make would be to include a time frame, so
So
that
for the
for the
February 9th.
February,
Yep.
whatever date that's going to be. I'll take your word for it. So, yeah, just so that it's coming back to the next council.
I don't suppose you'd go along with a line in there for us rejecting it, would you?
Well, I guess the line that suggests that there's a potential that this is a no decision is related to possible support of the Trochu housing. So it's not saying that we will support, it's saying that we possibly will, but at least it's putting us in a place where we're prepared to make that decision based on administration's feedback for our next council meeting. And so it leaves us, this is not an absolute yes, and it's not an absolute no, but it's a, we will be making a decision hopefully on February 9th.
Through you, Mr.
I believe we've asked administration for this on numerous occasions. And I think they've already given us our answers. I don't know, I feel we have enough right now to vote on.
Well, I guess, Councillor Keever, my comment in relation to that is then we'll defeat this motion, you will make a different motion, and then we as council will make a decision on that motion. The process is, I have a motion on the floor. I would like us to address that one. If it's defeated, I'm open to hearing where we might go from there.
And your suggestion of adding another word in there would not be seen as friendly, to be quite honest with you. So we would have to vote on an amendment. So if you want to put an amended motion in, okay, I see that is not happening. Okay, we have a motion before us. I will read it out, so Councillor Penner, you can hear the motion as it is presented on our screens here. She's still frozen. Can you hear us, Councillor Penner? Oh, boy. Councillor Penner, are you still with us? Well, she says yes. She can hear us. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, as long as you can hear me. We have a motion before
Yeah.
us. I will read it out loud to you so that you know what's written on our screen. Councillor King moved that council direct administration to prepare a framework related to possible support of Trochu Housing Corporation project prepared for the February 9th, 2021 council meeting. You've heard that? Please?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion before us. Is there any discussion to this motion prior to the question? I know we've spent a lot of time at it. I am willing to help our neighbors, but I want to see what conditions are placed here, because I think it's incumbent upon us to protect the county and possibly mitigate some risk on our side. So I am willing to support the motion just to see what the conditions will be. Is there any other discussion prior to the question? Councillor, Deputy Reeve McGee, it's been a long day.
I would like to just echo what you just said in that I think we have to trust process here, and fair process is the least we could do for Trochu.
Any other discussion? Seeing as not, I will call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? And the motion is carried. Okay. That takes 9.1 out of this. So what's left is we have closed session left to go into, section 17 of FOIP, and which one are we doing, 16 or 24? No, I know we're doing 17, but we've also got some other business, no, we're done those two? Okay, all right, so we will be going into closed session to deal with section 17 of FOIP. All those, okay. Motion made by Councillor Christie to go in closed session. All those in favor? And that is carried, and unzip us.